Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sarirasya cha vaidena yopakaro tam paramuniyam Patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi. So we are continuing this discussion. So we have to remember the background. We are dealing with this quadrangle of grief, dukkha. Vyasa's paradigm of quadrangle. That means dukkha here means an awareness of imperfection with the worldly experiences, worldly life, and then a strong desire for some higher transcendental value. This is the real implication of dukkha. So often we have to keep in mind, you find dukkha is translated as grief or sorrow. There is an element of sorrow in it, but it is not any kind of feeling miserable. Rather, it is the feeling for some higher spiritual value, for some higher meaning in life, and also a quest for a real understanding of what we actually are, our true identity. So in the 17th verse, we must remember, the cause of suffering is explained. So this suffering is the association, is due to the association of the seer and the seen, the experiencer and the experienced, the subject and objects. So in real life, what happens? In our everyday life, when we go through various multiple experiences, some of them painful, some of them happy, we identify ourselves with those experiences. And then our mind takes the form of those experiences. So there is complete association and identity between our sense of self and all these multiple changing experiences. And this creates problems. So in real life, for example, when something unfortunate happens, we suddenly suddenly get upset. We identify ourselves as the experiencer of that unfortunate event. When we lose money, well, I'm the unfortunate person who has lost money. When I feel sick, I'm the unfortunate person who is sick. So here, I'm not this unfortunate person who loses money and therefore becomes unhappy or miserable. Or when my body becomes sick, something, then my real sense of identity, our real self becomes sick. It doesn't happen that way. But for a moment, we identify. And so what's the way out? This association should be stopped. Our real sense of identity is not this psychophysical intellectual mechanism that goes through all these multiple experiences, happy now and unhappy next moment. No. So this association should be stopped. That's a way out of grief according to Patanjali. Now, and by way of explaining the method of stopping disassociation, the author, Patanjali, gives a graphic description of what the objects are, what the seer, the experiencer is, and what the experienced, the seen phenomena are. The phenomenal world, the object, and ourselves, the subject. So there is an interesting, very profound description. And as you go further, you find the commentators give a lot of new insight into our true personality. So we already discussed this 19th sutra. We discussed this elaborately. Vishesha, avishesha, lingamatram, alingam, alingani, gunaparvani. We explained this. The whole drishya consists of the 5 already: the earth, water, fire, the air, and the ether or space. In Sanskrit, Prithvi, Apa, Tejo, Vayu, Akasha. 5 fundamental elements, gross elements, and their subtle dimensions called tanmatras. So, and then that also we explained. And then the 5 organs of speech, the 5 organs of action, with speech, hands, feet, excretory organs, and other organs called senses of action and senses of perception. The sense of sight, sense of hearing, smell, taste, touch, all these constitute the visible, the external nature. That is drishyam, or the objective world, the seen or the experienced, the objective phenomena. All this we explained. Now we are going to the next sutra, which is very profound from the standpoint of Indian epistemology. You find a number of theories of knowledge, theories of knowing, propounded in this area. It is a profound description of Indian epistemology. So now here, drashta is explained. Drashta is the experiencer. To give you an idea of what drashta is from the Vedantic perspective, I shall give a short description. Drashta, who is the seer, who is the witness, who is the subject? In our everyday life, our whole human experience can be analyzed from 3 perspectives: the waking state, the dream state, the dreamless or deep sleep state. This is an elaborate description of this particular method in Vedanta that you find in Mandukya Upanishad, which there are around 60, 70 lectures on Mandukya Upanishad, where there are long descriptions of this phenomenon. You can find on YouTube or you can find a website. In a few minutes. The concept of seer. So Vedanta and Yoga divides the entire phenomenon of knowing and knowledge into 2. The knower, that is the subject, and the known, the seen, the object. So you and everything else all belong to the objective. I is the subject. I is the drashta, and everything is drishyam. The Sanskrit word is drishyam, which we explained here. The entire universe, the whole cosmos is the seen, the experienced, or drishyam, the objects. Not only the cosmos, the senses with which we walk, the senses with which we perceive, all these also are included in this objective phenomena. It's called drishyam, the seen, the experienced. Now, according to Vedanta, there is one central principle. There is only one reality, and that reality is the seer or the experiencer. It's called drashta. The experiencer is the only reality. In the absolute of the word reality, capital letter R. The experienced phenomena, the objective phenomena, are not totally unreal, but not absolutely real because they change. So anything which undergoes a change, anything that does not remain in the same condition for all times, the past, present, and future. Anything which is subject to any kind of mutation or change is real, but only in a relative sense. It is not real in the absolute sense. The only thing that is real in the absolute sense, the absolute reality, is drashta, the Atman. Now, this is analyzed in the Mandukya Upanishad in the light in waking, dream, and deep sleep states. So, in waking state, we go through many experiences, multiple experiences. But these experiences are all gross. Gross here, Sanskrit word is sthula, which means an experience in which our mind and senses of perception or senses of action are involved. That's the meaning of gross experiences. See, when you have to walk, your mind is involved because when you look at the distance with your eyes, which is a sense of perception, called jnanendriya. And mind also is involved. Plus, you walk with your feet or you drive a car. So, senses of action, senses of perception, and mind are involved in any kind of gross activity, which is what is happening in waking state. In dream state, also we walk. But we don't walk with our feet because we are sleeping. But we really feel we are walking. So the experience of walking during waking state is replayed, re-experienced, reenacted, relived in dream state. But not really, but in a subtle sense. Subtle in the sense only mind is involved. You are not eating food with your hands. Only mind is projecting that experience which you already had during waking state in a subtle way. Then you feel you are eating food. So it is subtle experience, subtle in dream state, it's gross in waking state. In dreamless deep sleep state, we do not experience any of these, but it is not totally devoid of any experiences, because after waking up, when you come back to the waking state, you feel a total relaxation, a great joy, a restfulness, which you cannot have if you did not have a dreamless deep sleep. If you are always having nightmares, you won't have restful sleep. In fact, restfulness in Vedanta is possible only in samadhi, in its spiritual sense, and in deep sleep in its physical sense or mental sense. Now, here there are changes with regard to experiences. As I said earlier, in waking state, you walk with the help of your mind and the senses of perception and in waking state, you are sleeping in San Francisco, you dream as if you have reached. You dream yourself walking in New York. So there are differences with regard to time, space, and many other details between dream and waking state experiences. So there are similarities and also there is an intimate connection. It is a psychological fact. You can never have any dream experience which is totally separate and independent of your waking state experiences. No one can have. So if somebody tells me, well, I which I can never explain in the life of any experiences that I had during waking state, Vedanta will tell you, you might have had that experience in previous life. It is not sophistry. It is not far-fetched philosophization or mythology. Because Vedanta tells you all your dream experiences had some roots in your waking state experiences, but there are definite differences, dissimilarities also. So in deep sleep, of course, we don't experience, but there is no absence of experience. Our tools, our instruments of experiencing disappears or becomes benumbed in deep sleep state. According to Vedanta, our mind gets completely submerged in the fundamental ignorance of Vidya. That is the Vedantic description, which I come later. So it's clear that there are differences with regard to experiences, but the experiencer is the same. Experiencer is the same. The same experiencer has one set of experiences during waking state and another set of experiences during dream state. That's why the same person is able to relate both his waking and dream state experiences. If it's two different persons, this comparison will be impossible. So the same experiencer, the same drashta, that's the word drashta, the seer, the subject, continues to exist without consciousness, human experience, human what you call verbalization or objectification. There's no difference with regard to witness, the subject, the seer, the drashta. But the drishyam or the experienced objects continue changing. Now, whatever is subject to change is not absolutely real. It is not absolutely unreal, because anything that is absolutely unreal, you can never have any experience. If anything is absolutely unreal, you can never experience it. If it is anything absolutely real, that experience will never vanish, it will remain the same. So Vedanta says the drishyam, the objective experienced world, is true and real only in the relative sense, and the drashta, the witness, the subject, is absolutely real in the absolute sense. This is the fundamental thesis of Vedanta. This should be kept in mind when we discuss this subject, because the whole yoga, all these philosophical structures are one way or other incomplete descriptions of the fundamental thesis of Vedanta. Vedanta is the foundation of everything. Then one may ask the question, why we study the Yoga Sutras? Yoga Sutras are unique in one way. Yoga Sutras are the only details. It's called ancient Indian psychology. The only literature which gives a complete analysis of life at a mental and psychological and emotional level. What our mind is like, how our mind functions, this explanation is found only in the yoga system. And once we understand the yoga system, we can avoid many problems. At least once you read the Patanjali system, study properly, then you will be able to find out what all tricks our own mind plays upon ourselves. And once we understand a trick for a trick, then others cannot play tricks. One can play a trick with you only. A trick, then your trick is not going to work with me. So that's one uniqueness of yoga system. So now we are going to discuss this important topic, drashta, subject or witness, or the seer or the experiencer. The sutra is the 20th sutra of Sadhana Pada, second chapter. Drashta drishimatraha suddhopi pratyayanupasya. This is a sutra. The meaning is simple. Who is the seer? The experiencer. Experiencer by itself is only awareness. It is awareness alone. And it is pure. Suddha means pure. And it witnesses the modifications of the mind. It never really identifies itself in its true nature. But we forget the true nature of our true self, so we identify ourselves with the objective world and modifications. So we suffer, we face problems. Now, here, of course, this sutra in a way is an elaboration of the 17th sutra, means the association of the seer and the seen that we already discussed. What really happens is the Purusha reflects in the Chittam and then or mind, and then mind is able to understand and recognize different experiences. So the reflection of Purusha or consciousness or Atman. Atman is the word used in Vedanta. Purusha is the word used in Yoga. So the reflection of Atman or Purusha in our buddhi or intellect or mind enables us to understand various objective phenomena. But the Purusha itself is devoid of any kind of modifications. So modifications are only the result of the mind, which gets its ability to function as mind, perceives the external phenomena. Now, in this, to understand this sutra, we had to discuss a few important points about the process, the dynamics of knowing and knowledge. That's why I said it is very important from the metaphysical, the philosophical, and epistemological point of view to understand this. So there are different views here. How do we know things? So Yoga and Vedanta says this knowing process has two important aspects. One, knowledge of the objects. For example, this is a glass or this is a paper. In the old traditional books, if you read, you find a stereotype, archetypal example. I am Khataka means this is a pot. You find it just as in Aristotelian syllabism and different typical archetypal of repeated examples in Western thought. You can find the same parallel syllogisms used in Vedanta and Yoga. So I am Khataka is the example that you come across in the Sanskrit books. Means this is a pot. So in modern times, let us say this is a computer. That's all. Or it's a telephone or something. Now here you get the knowledge of an object. It may be a paper, it may be an object, anything. Then there is another important aspect, self-awareness of this knowledge. If you are not aware of what you know, then your knowledge is of no use to you. So this is an important, intricate point, remember. Knowledge of the object and self-awareness of this knowledge of the object. I should know that I know this. Otherwise, my knowledge of this object is as good as ignorance. I know that this is a pot. I know that this is a computer. That's as important as the knowledge that this is a computer. Now, so these are two aspects. The question is, are they two different processes following one after another? Or are they two processes happening simultaneously? These are two different broad streams of thoughts in Yoga and Vedanta, in Indian philosophy in general. You find a little of these descriptions in maybe in Berkeley's Appearance and Reality, the subjective idealists you find. Because in any idealistic thinking, a discussion on knowledge of an object and an accompanying awareness of this knowledge of an object, both are important. So, there are two broad streams of thought on in Indian philosophy with regard to these two aspects. That is, knowledge of an object, like this is a computer, this is a pen, this is a pencil, and our own awareness of this knowledge that we have got. Because our awareness of this knowledge alone helps in making proper use of this knowledge. Now, as I said, there are two broad views. The first view is called Swayam Prakashavada, means the school of philosophers who believe that these two happen simultaneously. When you know an object, that immediately is followed by a self-awareness of the knowledge that I know this object. The first knowledge, the first school, this is Sanskrit term is Swayam Prakashavada, means it's like light. Light has got twofold functions. Light reveals other objects, and light reveals itself. No other object can do both the functions. When there is a light, this book is revealed. But the book cannot reveal itself and other objects. Light alone can do that. So according to Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, this happens simultaneously. That's why when we realize that we are not this psychophysical mechanism, this body-mind complex, but we are in reality that awareness, the consciousness, the self, the Atman itself. When we realize this, at this stage, we do not speak anything, explained. But knowledge at all other levels can be explained, or you can make an attempt. Because this self-awareness is itself the essence of knowledge. Just as when you see light, you don't need another torch to find out whether it's light or not. The light is self-revealing. So one important school, according to Vedanta, is knowledge is self-luminous. When our ego as a cognizing agent perceives an object, a jar or a computer, that this is a jar, this is a computer. Then the self, which is at the back of this consciousness, simultaneously reveals the I know this. So they come together. This is the one important view. The following descriptions may look a bit too pedantic, but it's really not pedantic. It is a very scientific and rational description of the whole process of human knowledge, the process of knowing. So the most profound exponent of this view is Shankaracharya himself. And his followers said, Avedyitte sadi aparoksha vyavahara yogitvam swayam prakashitvam. Means, it's a very interesting point. Light as Atman reveals everything and reveals itself. Actually, Atman can never become an object of another subject. Atman cannot be known, but when you know the Atman reveals itself, it self-reveals. This again is an important point in Vedanta. That everything other than Atman, consciousness, can be objectified. It means it can become the object of knowledge for a subject. Everything. Whatever we try to understand intellectually, we try to explain verbally. So understanding a cognition and a verbal description go together. You can see this in all our experiences. Suppose you have seen an animal in the zoo which you have not seen earlier. You would say it's like a tiger, you may say. Even if it's a totally new animal which you have not seen, still you use inference, assumption, any you may comparison, you may make use of any of the tools of epistemology to describe what you have seen as a part of an attempt to objectify that object. Suppose you come in contact with something whose name you don't know. Then you will try to explain it as it is something which I don't know. It is an explanation. In other words, every process of objectification is accompanied by an attempt to verbalize. This is an important point in Vedanta, Indian philosophy. Verbalize things with the help of 5 important tools, either of the 5. You should remember this is a bit technical, but a little bit of technical things may be useful to understand deeper aspects of yoga. Yoga is not all about solving the problem of anxiety. It's also about creating a situation when there will be no anxiety at all. There will be no need to solve the problem of anxiety because there is no anxiety. So the metaphysical aspect is, whatever we try to explain, we make use of any of these 5 conditions. Well, what is it like? You try to explain it, verbalization. Yes, it's like sun or it's like moon. Nobody will ask you, what is moon? No ask. So it is obvious. This is one kind of explanation. You may ask, who is that person? You may say, oh, he is a musician. So you try to explain that person in the light of his profession, his work, his interest, because he's a musician. You may tell, he is my brother. So you try to explain him in the light of your own connection, your own relationship with him. Or if you ask, what's a flower like? It's a red flower. You try to explain the flower with the help of a color. So sometimes you try to explain in the light of the help of a job, of the work that the person is doing, or in the light of some relationship you have, or some attributes you have, the red flower, white flower, tall person, so on. So these are various attempts to objectify, verbalize things in the world. Now, Vedanta says, when you really see an object, along with that, you also develop a self-awareness of that object. You may ask the question, why this is so very important? There are other views in Indian, who would say that these two processes take place one after another and separately. For example, you may have heard of Indian school of logicians, Nyayikas. They would say, well, first you come to know this is a computer, this is a pen, this is a chair. And then afterwards, a reflection is necessary for you to become aware of the fact that you have recognized that object as a chair or a table. That's an important thing. And there are some other schools like the Bhatta school of Mimamsakas who will tell you that you can really never know an object. You may recognize an object, this is a chair. But you will never be aware of the fact that you know this chair. That awareness comes after some time through inference. So these are different views. So to understand the real importance of the Advaitins' view that knowledge of an object and our own self-awareness of our knowledge of that object come together, this is the view of Vedanta. And this should be understood. This happens at the level of drashta. So, now, one of the very common and widely respected view in this context, I shall explain this, then I will come to the view held by one school of Mimamsakas, ritualist philosophers called Prabhakara. He would tell you that knowledge or the process of knowing, the non-object and the knower constitute one single unit. That means there is no knowledge separate from the non-object. And there is no non-object or knowledge which is separate from the knower. So they go together. It's called jnata traditional scriptures. So this is the common view in Indian school. Now this process takes place only at the level of drashta. So Patanjali says the seer is in fact pure awareness. So in meditation, this is what we are trying to do, and this is true in Buddhist meditation, Vipassana meditation, mindfulness awareness, and also in the Yogacara school of Buddhism. Yogacara is a prominent school, which is Vijnanavada. It's called subjective idealism. According to them, all the objective phenomena, they come and go. But there is an eternal subject. Vijnanam it is called, Alaya Vijnanam, which is a permanent and disappear. They are all momentary entities. Now, when we become aware of our own awareness, our own entity as the eternal subject and witness, then the objective phenomena, the multiple experiences, good and bad, miserable or otherwise, will not affect us. That's why in meditation, we are actually trying to turn inward and trying to self-discover this awareness. And to the extent we are able to, through introspection, able to self-discover within our own inner self this eternal awareness, this eternal subject, then our whole perspective towards objective world undergoes a change. That's why real meditative experience gives us peace of mind, serenity or quietude. That's the whole secret of it. Through meditative process, when we discover within our own system the presence of this eternal self-awareness, and then when we look at, then after long meditation, when we are able to link ourselves to this self-awareness within, our whole perspective, our attitude, approach towards external experiences undergoes a change. We suddenly realize the relative nature, the non-permanent nature, the transitory, impermanent nature of the objective phenomena. And simultaneously, we also become aware of the eternal nature of this self-awareness within. So, that change of perspective is at the root of the feeling of quietude and calmness that we feel within through meditative process. So our whole approach, attitude was drishya, means the objective phenomena, experienced phenomena, undergoes a change. It is not a matter of conviction. Conviction is very superficial. Conviction is very helpful, but conviction is only the beginning of this. So conviction in a way becomes deep-rooted, then it becomes our natural characteristic, it becomes our culture. That's why once we realize our true identity as the drashta, the witness, the subject, the awareness, the eternal awareness within, then the modifications of the mind, you find in the sutra, Suddhopi, this drashta, this witness, this subject is eternally pure. It is unaffected by the changes in the external world. And then what happens? The drashta in its true nature is only witness, not a participant. That's why pratyaya anupasya means it witnesses. The drashta, the seer, the witness, the subject, witnesses. Doesn't get involved in the drama of human experiences. Once we realize this drashta, our own status as the drashta, the seer, the witness, then our whole perspective towards the perceived, experienced, seen, objective phenomena undergoes a change. So, what happens? Once we realize this, then there is no need for waiting or inference for us to understand that we have realized this. I gave a series of description, different views with regard to these two processes. That means the knowledge of an object and our own self-awareness of this knowledge. Means I know there is a computer. But in spiritual life, according to Patanjali, once we realize our true status as a drashta, the subject, then it is self-revealed. The knowledge and our own self-awareness of the fact that we have really experienced that knowledge come together. That is the point to understand. So, perhaps we may require a little detailed discussion on this point which I discussed. So we can have a longer discussion today. It's a somewhat technical subject. So those of you who have questions to ask, feel that some of the points that I discussed needs more explanation, that also is welcome.
I was curious about this meditation. I don't know if I'm going to try to phrase this question as best I can. Is the first part of, I guess, with Yoga Sutras that you want to develop concentration, dharana, and it would be sort of like on an external object, typically, like the breath, or a candle flame, or a mantra, or something like that.
Yeah.
But then eventually, through that process of developing heightened concentration, then, if I'm understanding you correctly, then you want to turn that concentration inwards toward kind of the idea of going deeper in meditation?
Yeah. Yes. Now here, in this, the 20th Sutra here is dealing with the subject, who actually am in my true nature. That experience comes as a result of the practice of Ashtanga Yoga, which I explained in the Samadhi Pada. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. So, in its practical aspect, dhyana is explained as the ability to keep your mind concentrated for a very long time. The ability to keep your mind concentrated for a very long time comes as a result of this awareness. Because if you are distracted by the objective world, then you won't be able to remain for a long time in a relaxed mode. So, a long process of concentration which gives you a feeling of complete restfulness and relaxation is possible only when you reach this level of self-awareness. That's why in the sadhana pada, this drashta, the nature of seer explained. The dhyana and samadhi, the 7th and 8th steps in it, stages. It's really an advanced stage. And samadhi is the end. But in this sadhana pada, means the chapter in the published book, 2nd chapter, a long process of practices and steps to be followed is explained elaborately. So in this particular context, we are discussing the whole yoga philosophy in the light of what we are trying to achieve. What we are trying to achieve is to become aware of the reality of that what is to be avoided. Heya, you remember this there is a grief to be confronted, is to be avoided, and its cause and the method to avoid it. So this 4 quadrangle we are explaining here. And why do we feel this grief, this imperfection? Why does our mind get identified with all these objective phenomena? Because it forgets its true status as a drashta, as the subject, as the witness. So it identifies itself with all drishya, the external phenomenal world. So we should know that our true nature is the drashta, the self-awareness. So that is being explained here.
Right. What I'm asking is, how do we go from that stage of being able to concentrate on the external world to being able to concentrate on this drashta?
Yeah.
Is it, I've heard people say sometimes when the pauses between the breath or the spaces between the thoughts, like I'm trying to think about if there's an actual sort of focus, or does the process of meditation just open up and like you're saying, self-reveal itself?
Well, the best way, an easy, an informal way to meditate, that's often practiced by many people, is to as a transcendental reality that's beyond the psychophysical mechanism. And then if you concentrate on that aspect, then the pull of the external experiences will be reduced. So once we practice this for some time, then slowly you find a feeling of inner relaxation, serenity, and peacefulness. That comes as a result of dissociation with the external world, the opposite of association here. That's a way out of this problem. That's what happens in meditation. In meditation, for some time, you feel this identification is, this chain is broken. But constant practice will enable you to keep in mind the memory of this inner experience that you had while meditating. And then as you practice more and more, then even in the midst of all these associations, attachments, all these things, our mind will naturally develop a tendency to go back to this true nature, self-awareness. So gradually the feeling, that's what happens in the yoga books, commentary, they say, slowly your whole perspective looking at the external experience of the external phenomena undergoes a change. It doesn't solve the problem. Angle. See, once you come in contact, once you are in touch with some higher dimension of your own personality, then all other lower levels, relative things, you can take in your stride. So they are no more such serious problems as they used to be. Your whole perspective undergoes a change. Not that meditation solves the problem, but meditation will help you to discover within yourself another inner source and then link yourself to this higher inner source. And with the help of that perspective, if you look upon the external world, then it's no more a big problem. Otherwise, every single physical or mental problem becomes an insurmountable dilemma, a very big problem. Every physical, mental, intellectual problem becomes something of a very big challenge. But once you self-discover within your own self this inner source, it doesn't come from outside. We are actually self-discovering. Once you happen, then you get yourself linked to this. And then you are no more led to that. Second point is, from a philosophical angle, you feel there is something higher and much more permanent within yourself compared to this impermanent, changing, phenomenal experiences. Then you don't take it very seriously. Not that you run away from it, that's there, but when you are equipped with a new tool, new instrument that helps you to take a different perspective, that's no more a problem. And then when you become spiritually stronger than the problem is a lesser problem. That's why we feel inner serenity or peace when we pray. The same mechanism works in prayer. Not in prayer pray in solitude. When you pray in solitude, not witnessed by a large number of people, not a demonstration, but your own inner private prayer when you do. And if you feel relaxation or serenity, you know what happens? Your mind acquires a new instrument. It gets armed with a new armor, spiritual armor plate. So the problem is less now. Not that the problem has vanished, but you have become spiritually stronger. You are endowed with a new perspective. This is what happens in prayer, in meditation. And also when you read Of course, prayer and meditation are much more intense and much more helpful in that way. So 2 points are there. One is inner self-discovery. The other one is linking ourselves to this self-awareness. Our real status as drashta. Through dhyanam, through meditation, we are actually achieving this goal. So this is the chapter that actually prepares you for that stage. That's the idea. Another explanation by commentators that's very significant. This is actually sadhana pada. From the standpoint of spiritual growth, this is a first step. Practices, means, methods. Samadhi pada is the first chapter in the published book. Samadhi actually comes a third stage in real spiritual life. So in the sadhana pada, you are given an idea of all these high goals to achieve. With this in mind, you can practice yama, niyama and the 10 disciplines which I mentioned in the samadhi pada. Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama. Ahimsa, satya, steya, brahmacharya, parigraha, shauja, sandosha, tapasya, adhyaya, ishwaram, pridhana. 10 disciplines are mentioned in the ashtanga, first 2 steps. Why should we practice non-violence, absence of greed, truthfulness, inner contentment? All these questions may arise. You can self-discover your own inner real self. That's why in the sadhana pada all these things are explained. So first of all, you should know what we really are. We are the drashta, we are not drishya. We are not the objective world, we are the witness. But frequently we forget and we identify also with the external drishya. And then we are gone. So once you understand this drishya, the scene, the experienced things are subject to change. They are never permanent. They are non-eternal. Change is their essential character. They are never perfect. They are not absolute. They are only relative, coming and going. Once you realize, but your Atman, the real drashta, try to self-discover this real source of your own identity. For that you are prepared. That's why these things are explained in this book.
Does it happen naturally if you practice the Ashtanga system, or do you have to have grace at some point?
Excuse me, grace.
Yeah, I'm saying if you practice Ashtanga yoga
Yeah.
thoroughly, is it going to happen naturally like a flower opening towards the sun, or do you have to have grace of spirit?
God is, the status of God in yoga is a bit shaky. In the sense, God has a place in yoga and no place in Sankhya. There are 2 schools of Sankhya, Ishvara Sankhya and Nirishwara Sankhya. I'm not going to do it. So in the yoga, God has a place, but not as the giver of rewards for your actions, as highly elevated souls. But there is one statement in Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga, Ishvara Pranidhanadva. One sutra is there. And that is, from a psychological standpoint, is very crucial. So you can try to practice all the yama, niyama, all the important disciplines. But Patanjali gives an option, Ishvara Pranidhanadva. What is Ishvara Pranidhana? Total surrender, resignation to God. Remember, God should be properly understood. God, according to Yoga and Vedanta, is an immanent reality, spiritual truth. It is not an anthropomorphic creator God. Rather, it is of the nature of the highest consciousness, self-Atman, which is all-pervading, immanent and transcendental. If you sincerely design your actions, your thoughts to this all-pervading, immanent reality, then you cannot consciously do anything wrong to anybody. Then all these characteristics will become natural to you. So Ishwar Pradhana means complete surrender, resignation to God will be a great psychological help in developing non-violence, truthfulness, absence of greed, all these great qualities. Resigned to God. That's why even according to Augustine, real confession is not the license renewal that you do every week. Real confession makes you a real Christian. That's what happened to St. Francis of Assisi, Augustine himself. He heard this sentence, one statement in the Bible, and you find this happening to many great saints. So that is an example of resignation to God. If you really resign to God, then that God awareness will be with you in whatever you do, whatever you think. So it becomes, it accompanies you, that feeling, that spirit and life and thoughts. So that is the real significance of what Patanjali says, Ishwara Pradhana. So the God has a place, but not as a anthropomorphic creator God who rewards you, gives you rewards for your actions. Otherwise he may keep away from, no, nothing like that. Send you heaven and hell, nothing of the kind. That's a difference. Okay, I think we have completed. Okay. So, Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.